Okay, let's go on. So I started learning questions about lexicology. So let's start with the first one. English vocabulary characteristics, stylistic classification of the English vocabulary and borrowings. Okay, so lexicology is a branch of linguistics which deals with the vocabulary of a language and the properties of words as the main units of the language. Vocabulary is the system formed by the sum total of all the words of a given language. Lexicology as a science has several subdivisions. General lexicology studies words and vocabulary irrespective of the specific features of any particular language. Special lexicology devotes its attention to the description of the characteristic peculiarities in the vocabulary of a given language. Then we have historical lexicology which studies the evolution of any vocabulary, the origin of various words, their change and development. Then we have the last is descriptive lexicology, which studies vocabulary at a given stage of its development. And what? These subdivisions are based on two principal approaches differentiated by Ferdinand de Saussure. He distinguished, well, there are by two principal approaches, and these approaches are diachronic and synchronic. Diachronic approach studies words, studies the change and the development of vocabulary in the course of time, while synchronic approach studies vocabulary at a given time of its development, for example, at present time. Then we have lexicology studies various lexical units like morphemes, words, various word groups, phraseological units, and etymologically, the vocabulary of the English language is divided into the native stock of words and the borrowed stock of words. So borrowed words or borrowings are words taken over from another language as a result of contact and modified. Borrowed words are words taken over from another language and modified according to the patterns of the receiving language. And the most effective way of borrowing is direct borrowing. Direct borrowing as borrowing from another language as the result of contacts with the people of other countries and their literature. And what else? There are 5 periods of borrowings: German period, Old English period, Middle English period, Early Modern period, English period, and Modern English period. And all the borrowings are divided into non-true borrowings, for example, words which have morphemes of Latin and Greek origin, for example, protein. Then we have true borrowings, words, for example, Russian dacha or Russian babushka. Then we have loan translations, which are word for word translations. For example, forget-me-nots from French. Then what? Stylistically, words are divided into literary, neutral, and colloquial. For example, parent is literary, father is neutral, and dad is colloquial. And stylistically, then literary words can be subdivided into literary words proper, for example, calamity, harmony. Then scientific terms. We have 4. Then poetic words and archaisms. Yes, archaisms are words which are no longer used, but the notions they denote still exist, but they were replaced by other words. For example, albeit was replaced by although. And then we have barbarisms and foreign words. These are words which haven't been entirely assimilated in the English language, and they preserved their pronunciation. For example, bouquet. Then we have the colloquial words. The colloquial words are words with a tinge of familiarity or unofficiality about them. However, there is nothing ethically improper in their stylistic coloring, except that they cannot be used in official forms of speech, and they are subdivided into colloquial words proper, for example, chap. Then phonetic variants of neutral words, for example, fella instead of fellow. Then diminutives of neutral words or proper names. Daddy, Piggy, Johnny, etc. Then what? Most interjections, for example, gee, it expresses surprise, and slang. Slang, well, it's intentional usage of substitutes of neutral words and elevated words and expressions. In creation of slang, various figures of speech take part. For example, the upper story, meaning head, is a metaphor. Then skirt, meaning a girl, is metonymy. Then killing, meaning astonishing, is hyperbole. Then clear as mud is irony, etc. For example, one more. Whistle, meaning a flute, is understatement. Then we have professionalisms, for example, lab. Then we have jargonisms, words which appear in social or professional groups for the purpose of creating new notions, maybe, which already exist in the given language. For example, there is a radio jargonism, 10 to 4, meaning okay, I understand. Then we have social jargonisms. Social jargonisms, for example, sweet tooth, meaning a person who likes sweets, or private eye, meaning a detective. Then we have vulgarisms, or vulgarisms, I need to look up the pronunciation, which are insulting words, and they're very offensive and improper for usage. Improper for polite usage. For example, shut up. And then we have, I think, dialectical words. Dialectical words show the social standing of the speaker, and of significant importance, there is the so-called Cockney accent in English, which is the dialect of uneducated people in London. And the most characteristic features of this dialect are as follows. Diphthong A is pronounced I. For example, instead of say and pay, they say sai, pai. Then the suffix ing is pronounced in instead of ing. Sit in, stand in. And the last thing here is colloquial coinages or nonce words, which are words which are created for the current situation, with an analogy of existing words. For example, there was a balcony full of gentlemen. I think that's all. Yeah.